Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today's video we have a very good one for you. I found this Hawk DLX on Facebook Marketplace. Ran to go pick it up last night after work, and I'm kind of in the middle of tearing it down. My whole plan was, my biggest gripe, if you saw my other video on the Hawk 250X, my biggest gripe is the forks. Now this right here has inverted forks, and I've been looking over it, the frame, the neck, everything looks the same. So I'm gonna give it a shot. I got this for literally 300 bucks on Marketplace, which is nothing. So, if everything doesn't work, I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm either gonna try to sell some parts because this tank looks really good, the wheels, the motor. I might try to sell it. I might convert it to a carbureted model because everything looks really good on this bike. The tank is straight, no dents. The motor has got good compression. I turned it on. I don't know if that's spark. That's pretty much how I got it. It does have a seat, and it does have some other things, but when I bought it, the ECU was not connected to the bike, so I don't have any ECU for this, which kind of sucks. But with these bikes, it's super easy. You just gotta change a stator to a carbureted stator. You can buy the whole wiring harness on Amazon for like 30-35 bucks, and you have a carbureted bike. Obviously, if you can figure out how to change the tank to kind of a gravity fed, with a petcock or whatever, because this has got a fuel pump on it. So I might figure something out. Maybe I'll try to sell some parts, get my money out of it. I don't know yet, but my whole agenda, my whole goal for this bike is, if the front end, if the triple tree and the forks, if those fit on the Hawk X, this thing was worth every dollar. So we're gonna go ahead and start just kind of tearing it down. I did some little bits off camera already, just some easy screws for the fairings here. So I'm gonna set these aside, and then we're gonna move on to the tank. So to remove your tank, you're gonna have these fairings. There's gonna be a couple bolts in this side hanger, and you're gonna have one bolt in the very end here in the back. Then the whole thing will slide back. All right. Once it slides back, you're gonna have to kind of tilt it up, but don't yank it up right away, because you got a couple things still connected to it. You got your fuel line, you've got your fuel level gauge in here, and you've got some kind of vent, and you have your fuel pump switch. I forgot. So now, boom, tank is off. This still has probably 2.5, 3 gallons, so this is a full tank. So I'll have to figure out how to get rid of this gas later, but for now, it's off. Okay, with the tank gone, my main focus is going to be the front end. I just want to take the tank off so I get a bigger view of everything. I'm going to try my best not to start cutting wires and start cutting things, because again, if I can maintain all of this, maybe get some money out of it, that's going to be way better than if I just cut this whole thing up and now it's not good for anyone. So now let's move to the front wheel. Let's remove the front wheel. Let's get the cowl off. Let's get all that good stuff taken care of. All right, guys, coming to the front of the bike. One side of the axle bolt is a 14, other one's a 17. You're gonna hold one side down, the other side, you just loosen it up. There we go. Loosen it all the way up. Before you take your axle bolt out though, make sure the bike is elevated and leaning back a little bit. So, bolt comes out, slides all the way through. Alright, set the bolt down so you can get your hands on this. Take your speed sensor off, and boom, just like that, tire's off. After you take this off, so you don't lose everything, put these two back together, mate these back together before you walk away. Perfect, now I'm not going to lose it. Okay, now, so for the triple trees to come off, everything has to come off, including guards, brakes, speed sensor. Everything has to come apart, or at least be dangling out of the way. So we're gonna go ahead and start taking these little itty bitty things off. And now, one very thing to remember when you're taking something apart, take lots of pictures if you don't know how it came back together, or just remember the orientation. So it's bolt, lock washer, washer, right? Just remember that, or take lots of pictures when you're disassembling something. All right, now with the fork guards removed, we're gonna move on to the caliper. Caliper is gonna be a 12 millimeter bolt. That's pretty tight. Let me swap over. Without the extension, give a little more leverage. So, a little thing you can do, if the these are really tight for me. So all I'm gonna do, just loosen up the brake, because I'm gonna probably have to re-bleed the brakes anyway. Doesn't take that long, super easy job. So I'm just gonna leave these are tight, just leave that caliper on there. Just saves me a little more time. All right, now with everything pretty much disconnected from this fork, I can go ahead and remove the fork. So it's gonna be 2 bolts, and you're gonna have 1 bolt up here. So these are 10 millimeter. If these are on really tight, that's not good. Like, I think it was like 14 Newton meters of torque or something. Like, these should be very, not loose, obviously, where your fork falls off your bike, but you want these things to be very loose here. Okay, now with all 3 of our bolts loose, it should move. Now you're gonna have to grab the fork up here and just wiggle it back and forth. And we'll watch it here. It's just gonna slide right out of the hole here. Careful not to nick anything or pinch anything on the way out, but this should just slide right out of the hole. And just like that, 1 fork is off. So, real quick, you don't have to take these bolts all the way out to get the forks off, but there is some bracketry here and some little clamps that I do need. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop all this off here. So you got a little bit of bracketry here that you might need. So you wanna take these bolts all the way off. Once you got this separated from that, you can slide these bolts back in the hole and get them threaded down so you don't lose these bolts or lose the orientation that they came out in. And now moving on to the top bolt here. We're going to remove this bolt all the way. We've got some bracketry here. It's going to have to come off. So moving over to the right side of the bike here, we just have a couple zip ties holding in our speed sensor, and then we're going to repeat the same process. So you got a couple bolts here, a bolt up here, they're both 10 millimeter. Zing them off, fork will fall. First, let's cut these zip ties. Like butter. All our brackets disconnected. Remember, put these bolts back in the orientation they came out so you don't lose them or forget. And remember, always take pictures if you're doing something new. That way you have a reference to go back to. Now, real quick, whenever you're putting these back in, you don't have to thread it all the way back in, because you're gonna have to take it off again whenever you put those brackets back on the other bike. Or if they don't fit, going back on this bike, you're gonna have to put these brackets all back on. So don't get crazy and torque them all the way back down. Okay. So that would be normally the most that's holding this thing on, would be these top bolts. But I see a lot of zip ties and stuff, so that's what's holding this thing on. We're gonna cut those off. And voila, we broke it free from the housing here. So now it's really just gonna consist of unplugging things and cutting zip ties to get this whole thing out of here. So again, that's what we're gonna be doing. Our goal is to not cut, anything off that we might need to the best of our abilities. So this is our brake hose. right? So you gotta take this kind of rubber sleeve thing off here. Again, zip ties going in here, just unplugging it. Again, try not to cut anything. Cutting anything is our last resort right now. My goal is to just unplug it, pull it off from the thing, disconnect it here, and voila, just saved a free housing here. All this stuff is connected to the dash. This is our clutch. This is not connected. Let's take this fender off now. Those look like 10mm bolts. Yep, 10mm bolts. Just gonna run them out real quick. Back 2 bolts are an 8. Front 2 bolts are a 10. It's kind of weird, but if it works, I guess. Voila, we're off. Next, we can disconnect our speed sensor so we don't have this thing always just dangling in front of us. Set this aside. This might still work, so I wouldn't throw this away. Get some kind of ignition switch here for our key. So we're just gonna go ahead and disconnect everything from this little rubber boot here. Disconnect all our front controls, our dash, anything you can see here. We're just gonna go ahead and disconnect everything here from this. Okay, perfect. Now everything is disconnected from this little boot here. Now ideally, what is this? Oh, this is for the tank. Ideally now, should be able to just get this out of the way. And would you look there? You can get this whole thing out of here now. Perfect. Something fell. Oh. Little thing for the tank again. So go ahead and take the dash off now. They're all 10mm bolts. That's one of the good things with these bikes. Everything is an 8, a 10, or a 12. Outside of obviously the axle bolt. But everything else, very easy. Very, like, everything is the same. Can't mess it up. You just need a couple of tools. And these bikes actually come with a little packet of wrenches. Now, like, obviously they're not Craftsman or you know, some high quality tools. But they do give you a little bit of tools if you had to work on this thing, which in a pinch, they would work. So, dash is off, just the 3 bolts on the bottom, easy to go. Okay, we're gonna take off our ignition switch now. So again, 10mm bolts. Man, just the simplicity alone. You don't need a degree at Harvard to figure out how to take these things apart. That was on there really tight for some reason. Damn. Ignition switch out. If you want to replace this, it's easy to do so. They sell these on Amazon. You know, if you break the key off or whatever, doesn't look like the key broke off in it. So, very easy. I'm gonna most likely swap out the ignition to this thing when I get on, if this fits on the other bike. So I want to keep these bolts. I'm gonna go ahead and again thread these things back in here so I don't lose orientation or anything like that. So I'm gonna leave this bracket on here for the dash, because again, that's probably gonna have to go on this one here. It's already got the little bracketry that I need for that to work. My last thing I need to do is pop these fork bolts off. And again, they're 10 mil. So with the handlebar bolts loose and the mounts loose, you can just take the handlebars off here and lay them down out to the side, just out of the way. Because again, all we're after here is the triple tree. Again, you're having little bits and pieces hanging over. But now it's time for the head bolt here. I'm gonna figure out what size that is. Okay, on the Hawk DLX, head bolt here is a 22. If you don't have this big of a wrench and you have a set of channel locks, that can work. Just make sure you don't mar this bolt up too much. It is a nice bolt. You're gonna see this bolt when you're riding. You can fit a pipe wrench in here, that'll work too. Just you don't wanna mar this up too much, and just be careful if you use a pipe wrench. Good. Once you loosen this bolt up, this is going to be out of line now, so it's just fine. You just pop this bolt all the way out. It's going to be a big, it's got some grease on it. Big bolt. This head piece pops off. The only thing that's holding this bottom piece on is this collar here. There's a little collar that you turn. When it comes to this collar now, if you don't know how to set preload on bearings in the head stem here for this, just count how many times you turn this thing out, because you want to kind of match that or be close to it when you go put it on again, either on the same bike or the other bike. So again, this spins off. Now, when you spin this off, support the bottom, because once this thing threads out, it'll fall right out the bottom, and there's a bearing on here you don't want to disrupt or break. So just unthread this collar. If you want, pick up on it to kind of help it. But just unthread this collar here. And now boom, it's gonna fall out for you. Right? Perfect. Now, this top piece comes off. Set that down. There's a bearing in the top now as well. And there's also a race. I don't know if we're gonna need the race or not, but for now, just slide that bearing on the collar so you don't lose it. This one's pressed on the bottom. It's not coming off. Top one obviously might slide all the way down. It's fine. It'll come off when we decide to do our stuff later. And now, obviously, remember, cap on top. This is just a dust cover. This black part's just a dust cover. And we're done here with this triple tree. So now we need to see if we can get the other stuff off the other bike and see if this even fits in there remotely. In order to get this triple tree to fit on the Hawk X, you're gonna need two things. You're gonna either need the whole front end off a donor Hawk DLX, or somehow miraculously find bearings and races on like eBay or Marketplace or whatever. You're gonna need the races here. The races are what the bearings ride on when you turn, absorb the bumps some of the time. You're gonna need them, they're in here. I'm gonna get you a picture of it now, of the race that you need. Now this is the same neck, from each bike is the same neck, but you will need the races. The part that's the clear part where it rides on, okay? You have to pop the races out of the Hawk DLX. Use brass. Brass is soft. You use a regular punch, you're gonna mar it up, not good. You need to use brass. Gentle. Everything when you're doing this is gentle when you're doing the bearings. You tap the one out the bottom, one out the top. Same on the Hawk. The Hawk and the Hawk 250X have different bearing styles. They have ball bearings. These are very different. These are rollers. So you're going to have to do the same thing on the Hawk X or Hawk 250X. You have to pop the race out, and you're going to have to punch in the new races. Again, everything is brass. I can't emphasize that enough. Brass, brass, brass. So again, once you tap those bearings out of both bikes, take the races from the DLX, tap them in, and now this is the triple tree off the DLX, right? A lot bigger down here, a lot different design. This slides up into the hole all the way, as far as it'll go. Bearing on top. I'm not final installing it, I'm just showing you how it works. You need to still put some grease on it. You put your dust cover, and then you put this side down here. And you screw this thing all the way down. Make sure the dust seal sits in the middle between the bolt. And voila. Beautiful. We have our Hawk DLX triple tree. This sits on top. You thread your bolt, torque it down. And now we can fit Hawk DLX forks on here. And this turns with the bearings that are in here. So we're going to keep building. I'm going to cut the video. I'm going to do a little bit more work off camera. We're going to talk about it. But yes, it is possible. First video out there showing you that you can put inverted forks on your Hawk or your Hawk 250X. I love it. I'll see you guys soon. Updates so far. I've got bearings greased up. I got the lower and lower and upper triple tree on. I've got just the tight bolt tightened down. Got my forks set up here. We're on the road, baby. We're on the road to finishing this up. Another update video so far. Forks are in. Dash is in. Everything is good to go. Except we have one big issue. When you do the DLX forks, you have to use the DLX wheel. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about the speedometer yet here, because this is running off the cable. But this is way too short to fit in there. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. All right, guys. Here's the final product because I have to go to work. I'm going to try to use my wheel off the original Hawk 250X because it's straight. The other wheel is crooked. It uses a different speed sensor here. So I'm going to have to figure out something here. So what I'm thinking is, don't really want to use a bunch of washers, but I'm going to try to find a spacer here, about a 1/2 inch spacer, maybe 3/4 inch of a spacer. And we're just going to run this wheel because this wheel is straight. The other one is just messed up. And on the brake side's always going to be set because of this spacer here. So that distance is going to be good. I just need to close up this distance here. And this wheel should be good to go. So I'm really excited. I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna do. But as far as the bike, handlebar's not all the way on yet, but that's 4 bolts. But the dash is on, ignition for the key is on. I need to still figure out this bracket, why it's bent back. I think this is for the headlight. But as far as everything fitting, so far so good. Like I said, I just need to buy spacers, which I know they sell like these bolts on Amazon with like already pre-cut spacers. So I might head that route, but I'll keep y'all posted. But so far, everything fits. Everything's working really well. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for watching that whole video. I hope it was helpful. I hope you get the encouragement to try it yourselves. The only downside is you need pretty much a donor bike. You know, even if you get just the forks, you're missing a lot of the pieces. The biggest thing you need is a triple tree. Triple tree and the bearings and the races. Those 3 are going to be the most important key to this, because once I have the triple tree, I can run any setup I want that'll fit, obviously diameter wise, that'll fit inside of the fork tubes here, you know, inside the triple tree. That's going to be the only thing that really sets you back. It's been a couple of days since I've been able to finish this video. 1, I wanted to ride the bike, give y'all feedback, and 2, I wanted to bring y'all in on any issues that I ran into right away before you jump into it and then you're sitting there without a bike for a week, right? I wanted to ride it around, give my feedback, anything I noticed that I forgot to add in the video and whatnot. So that's what we're going to go over now. Fitment issues and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to go over now. Biggest thing, like I said, you need the triple tree, you need the races and the bearings. Each bike is different. The neck is the same so that it fits, but the bearing styles and the races completely different. You have to almost get a complete donor bike. If you can somehow source those parts individually, kudos to you. That was awesome. I looked online, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't buy individual pieces that I need, and honestly I'm glad I didn't, because I was able to salvage a lot more parts than just the triple tree. Another thing you're going to need is when you go to the upside down forks, it's a little bit taller, so you're going to need a longer clutch cable, longer brake line, and the third thing is your headlight. The headlight ties into the triple tree. There's a bracket there on your triple tree where the light actually sits in, the little post sits in that. The headlights are different from bike to bike, but the good thing is I have a spare front fender because the front fenders are the same. Obviously a little bit different stickers, but the bolt pattern is the same. Everything else is the same. Last thing, and I'm going to bring you close up on it so y'all get a better picture, is the wheel. Now I opted to use the old wheel from the Hawk X because I wanted to maintain the mechanical drive speedometer. If you're using the Hawk wheel or you go to an electrical dash here, you don't have to worry about that. Just slap the old, slap the Hawk DLX wheel in between the forks and you're good to go. Now one quick thing to note, if you're trying to maintain your stock Hawk 250 or Hawk 250X wheel, it is shallower, right? It's not as wide, sorry. You're gonna need spacers. So coming to the wheel here, the front wheel, to maintain your mechanical drive, you need about a 1/2 inch spacer on the mechanical drive side, and you're gonna have about 1/8 of an inch spacer on the brake side. Okay, so that's gonna center up the wheel in between the forks. Another thing you're gonna need, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I have two 1/16 inch washers here on both top and bottom brake bolts. That's gonna center up the brakes with the rotor. That's gonna make sure everything ties in straight. Without those spacers, and you know, if you don't have your wheel centered and then your brake caliper's not centered, it's gonna rub a lot until it wears out all the way. So that's pretty much it. Once you get the little things figured out, it works perfectly, right? Once you acquire all of the stuff, you get the wheel sitting straight, you got the spacers, everything's sitting in the correct spot, it runs perfect, it rides perfect. All right, guys, that's gonna pretty much conclude the video. Again, so much information on this. From what I can tell, this is the first video on YouTube that actually did what I did. Now, obviously in the Facebook Marketplace groups, in the Facebook groups, people have swapped the front end out, but it's just some traditional eBay, you know, no-name brand stuff that they're doing. This here, first video that I've seen where they take Hawk DLX front end, complete front end, and swap it onto a Hawk X or Hawk 250. So, again, a lot of information. If you need any help or questions or concerns, whatever, please let me know. I'd be glad to help you if you wanted to tackle this by yourself and do this to your bike, because I think it's well worth the money and it's well worth, honestly, the experience. Alrighty, guys, that's going to conclude today's video. I just got a new exhaust that came in today, so that's going to be coming up soon on the channel. If you like what you saw here, please consider hitting that subscribe button, the like button, and leave a comment down below. Alrighty, thank you.